tuning in a segment for the Slumpbuster podcast. If you think the Ravens are going to go to 6-1 this weekend, be sure to leave a like on this video.
And if you are rolling with the Bengals hater and taking Cincinnati this week, then make sure to leave a comment below.
Don't forget to subscribe. So of course, we have to talk to you, the resident Bengals hater, Kyle Ledbetter, about how the Bengals are sitting at 4-2, just behind the 5-1 Ravens. Yeah, the Bengals didn't have an impressive week 6 victory other than the fact that they blew out the Lions. And what I always tell you, and what I've told you before, is I think a good marker for a good team in those matchups against those bad teams is you got to blow them out. And they did blow them out. So I think that that is a good victory in that sense. When it comes to the Ravens, demolishing the Chargers like they did, wow, was not expecting that one. You listen to Justin Herbert talk in his press conference, he's telling the reporters how they were just showing them disguises that they didn't have any record of on tape. So it was a great performance by Wink Martindale to be able to contain the Chargers offense that we thought was just so explosive coming off of their recent performances. I mean, I don't think there was a reason to necessarily doubt Justin Herbert going into that game, but the Ravens just had an excellent game plan to be able to do it. In fact, you know, it's funny. I look back at our game preview from last week. I was saying how the committee approach for the Ravens, I didn't think would be able to generate the run game. Well, it just shows that even you and I might have a chance to run on this Chargers defense because Devonte Freeman, Le'Veon Bell, and Latavius Murray all scored touchdowns in that game. Just absolute bloodbath. Now, why this game should be fun to watch is the Bengals. I've been doing a little bit of research on their team and how they drafted. A lot of their players almost seem like they were built around the idea of stopping a Ravens-style offense. You talk about guys like Trey Hendricks, DJ Reader, Jesse Bates. These guys were all kind of drafted with that idea of looking at Lamar, playing within the AFC North. And they're 6-point underdogs going into Baltimore. Almost a touchdown underdog. That almost feels a little high for just how close the Bengals have kept most of these games. I'm just going to go back to the well here. I'm going to say the Bengals win this one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that freebie right there. Cause I was going to take the Ravens no matter what. Sometimes like we saw
freebie a couple weeks ago. Remember, it wasn't a cheap freebie there when they faced the Packers.
I also said the Jaguars were going to be a freebie and that didn't work out so well.
Maybe that's the key. Maybe that's the key. Keep an eye on that, folks.
So yeah, behind the scenes a little bit, like sometimes I have 2 helmets just in case, Juju picks one and I'm like, ooh, I really want to pick an opposite here. I only had the Ravens. I was going the Ravens the whole way. If we pick the same, we pick the same. But even still, let's address the Bengals real quick because you said that it wasn't super impressive last week. And I was quite impressed because exactly what you mentioned, which is that the good teams beat up on the terrible teams a lot. And I did not think the Bengals were that when I made the now famous decree that when the Packers were playing the Bengals, I'm like, well, this is not a playoff matchup. The Bengals are not a playoff team, even though they do still have the hardest schedule the rest of the season. That still hasn't changed. The Bengals, and this is a major concession on my part, the Bengals are better than I thought they were 2 weeks ago.
I thought you were going to make the major concessions, declare them a playoff team after that one.
Nope. This is a major from me, who is notoriously stubborn, I say sarcastically, but the Bengals are better and notoriously nuanced, by the way. I'm also very nuanced. I don't swing my opinions week to week very much about a team. The Bengals are better than I thought they were when they played the Packers. Are they going to make the playoffs? I think that's semantics at this point because we know who 5 of the playoff teams are going to be in the AFC. It's going to be Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, the Chargers, and the Browns. Barring injuries, like Cleveland should be okay, but those 5 teams should be a shoe into the playoffs. Then we also have someone who has to get the playoff spot in the AFC South. Probably the Titans. Who cares? Doesn't matter. They'll lose to whoever the 5 seed is, which means there's only one playoff spot left to grab. Do the Bengals get it? It's besides the point. The fact that the Bengals are in that position in the first place is a huge victory for them. Burrow and Chase are the best deep threat game in the NFL. And I can say that with a smile because I have Jamarr Chase on my fantasy team. That is 5-1 and in first place. This is an absolutely stacked offensive unit. You mentioned the defense, which is much improved. And you mentioned Hendrickson and Jesse Bates and DJ Reader. I think you missed the one player who's going to be the ultimate X factor going into this game. And that is Pro Football Focus's 3rd ranked defensive player At the middle linebacker position, Logan Wilson, 3rd round pick linebacker out of Wyoming. Shout out to the Mountain West, #Mountain Best Conference. That dude has been amazing this year. And he's one of these like flyer pickups that has turned out really well for the Bengals. He is the guy who's going to be QB spying Lamar Jackson the whole way, who amazingly, Lamar Jackson now runs his own play action, that he sets up his own runs to set up his own play action, because Lamar Jackson is really good. We did mess with the Chargers defense a little bit in stopping the run, but they were really good at stopping Lamar Jackson's passing game in that 34-6 bloodbath. Lamar Jackson, after starting 8 for 9, I think he went like 10 for 21 with 2 interceptions and no touchdowns.
I think what really shifted around that game, looking at the highlights, was the sudden changes, because there was twice that the Chargers turned over on downs within their own territory. I know they had to be a little bit more aggressive as they continue fell behind, but they did it at one point when they were down by only 2 scores in the first half is when they turned over on downs the first time. Of course, the Ravens, being the offense that they are, were able to turn that into quick points, and you just can't keep allowing that to happen. I think the Bengals will be a lot smarter with it in their play calling this week. And again, they match up very well defensively against the Ravens in similar ways to you mentioned the Chargers, except I think they might actually do a better job on containing this running back committee that the Ravens have put together, because the Chargers right now are allowing 160 running yards per game. They're one of the absolute worst at stopping the run. And I think it's impressive when you consider how you mentioned Chase and Burrow. They're beating coverages that are designed to not get burned by the deep ball. They were beating 2 high safety against the Lions. And could you say the Lions do they have the best safeties in the league? No, but you would also say that you're beating 2 NFL defenders deep on a 2 high safety. I think that's very impressive. And I think this Bengals offense is just really well put together. Their line that we maligned going into the year, they played all right. They're about an average offensive line. But you have Joe Mixon. Now they're able to mix in some P. Ryan or Chris Evans. So it's a 1-2 punch that they've developed at the running back position. And they might have one of the deepest wide receiving units in the National Football League when you consider Chase, Boyd, and Higgins. Those 3 up top are good enough any week to beat most secondaries. And Joe Burrow, what he's been able to do as he's gotten healthier getting into the year is impressive. He might develop. I'm not saying he is this now. He might be a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League very, very soon. He is looking like he's on that trajectory. He's not as mobile as most of the guys we think of at the top, but I think that he might be that next evolution of the pocket passer, because he's just mobile enough, even with the leg injury. I've just been really impressed with the Bengals because they've just been able to, even in the games that they've lost, they cover, they stay in games, they blow out the bad teams. And John Harbaugh himself, going into this game, said that he believes they're one of the best teams in the NFL. And it's hard to disagree with him because they're just playing the most consistent football. They're not getting too high. They're not getting too low. They're just playing consistent football. That's why I will say here, I think they are a playoff team. I think that they will keep that spot that they're in right now, because you look at the other teams that are fighting for playoff spots. The Raiders right now, they're 4-2, but obviously they have no head coach for the rest of the year. And they've had performances where they just get too high, they get too low. The Raiders can jumble around quite a bit. The Broncos, you look at them, we don't consider them really much of a playoff team anymore. And then the Browns, who they're fighting within their own division, the Browns, I mean, they have to address what's going on in Baker Mayfield. They just got blown out by the Cardinals, and their quarterback has a lat issue. They have injuries across the board. As long as the Bengals stay healthy, I don't see how they're not a playoff team at this point.
The Browns one would be the exception. If the Browns get so injured that their season falls apart, kind of like what happened to your 49ers or the Cardinals last year, that changes the math on this, because then there's 2 playoff spots available. And if there's 2 playoff spots available, then I give one of them to the Cincinnati Bengals, because the other team we're not talking about is the Steelers, who are just kind of hanging around, just trying to stay afloat this point. I'm also very thankful that neither of us talked about the Broncos as the playoffs. I'm glad that we finally stopped talking about that as a legitimate possibility. But also the Bengals, I keep saying it a bunch, Bengals got a really hard schedule this year. It just broke that way for them this year. They do play the Jets still. They do play the Jaguars. But they're staying
in those games with the good teams. If they just turn a couple of those into wins, listen, if they go 6-5 the remainder of the year, they're a 10-win team, which that might be good enough to win the playoffs. I think that they're slightly better than 6-5 the rest of the year. I think that
let's play this game then. I like this game. Let's pull up the Bengals schedule and go down the line. I know it's simple content, but sometimes simple content is good content. So,
the funny thing is, if we were to do this with the Browns, man, I should have just referred to my preseason Browns pick. You realize I'm 6-0 on the Browns this year in the preseason?
Yeah, you were bragging about that in the Slumpbuster chat. I get that. It's fun when you get to be that accurate. You should have kept picking the Browns at this point.
I should have kept picking them according to my preseason picks. We'll get into that with the Browns preview, but okay, you got that Bengals schedule pulled up?
So yeah, you have them beating the Ravens this week. So after that, they are at the Jets.
Win.
Home against the Browns.
I think they'll split with the Browns, whether that's home game or the road game. I think they'll split. So let's just say they go 1-1 against the Browns.
All right. I will make a mental note of that when we go down the board here. So, okay. Raiders on the road at the Raiders.
I'm going to say win because I don't think the Raiders are going to be good in several weeks. I know they came out hot coming off of Gruden's departure, but it's hard to maintain that same focus.
So then they are home against the Steelers.
They crushed the Steelers the last time they played them. And that was in Pittsburgh then, right?
Yes.
If they crush them and there was that much of a difference, it's hard for me to see them losing that game. They might sweep the Steelers this year.
Wow. Well, I think if that's the case, they'll definitely make the playoffs because then they're for sure a 10-win team if they could sweep the Steelers. Then you have home against the Chargers.
I mean, we saw the Chargers just travel to the East Coast and they didn't look that impressive. Can they fix that by the time that game rolls around? I'm going to say they lose that one, but I think it's going to be a very good game. In fact, that's one of the games I really want to spotlight. Whenever that game comes up, just note that that's going to be a game we're going to talk about. Justin Herbert versus Joe Burrow.
Got to wait till December for that one, but we'll take the mental note now.
Call that an early Christmas gift.
Home against the 49ers.
I feel like I'm getting boxed into a corner with this one here, huh?
A little bit, just a little.
Should I do a multi-week reverse jinx and say the Bengals win that one now? At this point, if the Niners secondary continues to get injured or banged up, I don't think the Niners necessarily have a secondary that could keep up with the Bengals wide receivers. And depending on what our quarterback situation is by that point, I think the Bengals might roll into that game as favorites, even on the road.
So is that a win? Or are you just refusing to make the pick?
Yeah, okay. Well, I will say right now the Niners get that win because it is going to be a road game. It is going to be potentially a big primetime style game if both those teams are competing by that point.
So then we have Broncos at Denver.
Win.
Home against the Ravens.
So I already picked them to beat the Ravens this week. I'm going to say they lose that one against the Ravens.
Then home against the Chiefs.
I'm going to say they lose that game just because Kansas City will start rolling towards the end there.
That means you have them at exactly a 10-17.
Exactly. So yeah, they are a team that is long and hell, they could flip one or two of those games. Like I said, I gave them a loss in the Niners game, but if they win that game, then they're 11-win team. And they have played as good as a 10-11 win team. That's what I'm saying. I think that even if they don't finish with that record, they've played as good as a team that could finish with that record.